Have you ever noticed how sometimes the greatest truths in life come from the most unexpected places? Not from a professor, not from a book, not even from a wise old philosopher, but from something or someone you'd never imagine could carry such wisdom. This story is one of those rare tales, a story where honesty, spoken at the right time, shattered pride, changed a heart, and reminded an entire kingdom of the power of truth. Long ago, in the vast lands of a flourishing kingdom, there lived a king named Adrian. He was powerful, respected, and feared. His word was law, his command unquestionable. To the world outside, King Adrian seemed like the perfect ruler. He built roads, supported trade, and ensured his armies were strong. But deep within the palace walls, there was another side of him, a side hidden behind his crown. King Adrian was proud, almost to the point of arrogance. He hated being corrected. He disliked anyone pointing out his mistakes. In his presence, courtiers flattered him endlessly. Servants praised him constantly, and ministers spoke only what he wanted to hear. It created a world where Adrian began to believe he could never be wrong. And slowly, without even realizing it, he built a wall between himself and the truth. Now, this king had an unusual hobby. He loved exotic animals. His royal gardens were filled with rare birds, dazzling peacocks, and even wild beasts brought from distant lands. Among them, there was one creature that fascinated him, the most a parrot, but not just any parrot. This one, unlike the others, had been trained to speak clearly, in full sentences, almost like a human. The king adored this parrot. Every evening, he would sit in the garden, and the bird would entertain him with songs, verses, and cheerful words taught by the royal trainers. It quickly became his favorite companion, because unlike people, the parrot never questioned him, never argued, never contradicted him. It simply repeated what it had been taught. But life, as it often does, has a way of placing lessons in front of us when we least expect them. And this lesson came to King Adrian in the form of the very bird he thought was his plaything. One day, after a grand court session where the ministers had once again showered him with praise, Adrian walked into the garden feeling triumphant. The parrot greeted him as usual, repeating the lines it had been taught. "Long live the king, the greatest of all, the wisest of rulers." Adrian smiled with satisfaction. But then, something strange happened. After a pause, the parrot tilted its head, flapped its wings, and in a clear voice, it spoke words no one had taught it. Words that silenced even the chirping of other birds in the garden. The parrot said, "Greatness is not in being praised. Greatness is in being true." The king froze. He thought he had misheard. "What did you just say?" he demanded. The parrot repeated, "Greatness is not in being praised. Greatness is in being true." Now, King Adrian was not a man used to being corrected, especially not by a bird. His face darkened with anger. "Who taught you this?" he thundered. But the parrot only fluttered its wings and said no more. That night, the king couldn't sleep. The words echoed in his mind. For the first time in years, he felt the sting of truth. He realized that in his court, in his palace, in his entire kingdom, no one ever dared to speak honestly to him. Everyone bowed, everyone obeyed, everyone praised. But if a parrotin innocent creature could see through the veil of flattery and utter such words, what did that say about him as a ruler? This was the turning point. The moment that would decide whether Adrian would cling to his pride or allow humility to crack open the door to wisdom. The next morning, Adrian called his ministers, his courtiers, and even the trainers of the parrot. He asked them all, "Do you believe I am truly the wisest? Do you believe I have never erred?" The court fell silent. Ministers looked at one another nervously. At last, one brave voice spoke, "Your Majesty, we say these things because you wish to hear them. But no ruler is without fault. No human is beyond mistakes." It was as if a dam had broken. Others nodded, timidly agreeing. And for the first time, Adrian saw the truth laid bare. He had surrounded himself with yes-men, people too afraid to speak honestly, and in doing so, he had lost touch with reality. The king dismissed the court and returned to the garden. There sat the parrot, calm and bright-eyed, as if waiting for him. He stared at the bird and whispered, "You have done what no man dared. You told me the truth." From that day forward, Adrian changed. He ordered his ministers not to flatter him, but to correct him. He asked his people to write petitions, not of praise, but of problems that needed solving. He promised rewards for honesty, not for flattery. Slowly, the kingdom shifted. Farmers began to speak of their struggles without fear. Traders openly discussed the flaws in the roads and markets. Even the ministers, at first hesitant, began to advise the king sincerely. And the king, instead of punishing them, began to listen. The parrot became a symbol in the palace, not just a bird, but a reminder. Whenever Adrian was tempted to bask in hollow praise, he would glance at the parrot's cage, remember its words, and steady himself. And what about the people? They saw a change in their king. He became more just, more approachable, more human. The kingdom flourished, not because the ruler was praised, but because he was willing to hear the truth. Now, dear listener, let's pause for a moment. Imagine yourself in the king's place. How often do we, in our own lives, prefer praise over truth? How often do we surround ourselves with people who tell us what we want to hear instead of what we need to hear? And how often do we silence the honest voices, whether they come from others or from deep within ourselves? The lesson here is simple, yet powerful. True greatness is not built on flattery. True greatness is built on honesty, humility, and the courage to face what is real, even when it hurts. The honest parrot may have been a small creature in a grand palace, but its words carried a weight that transformed a king, a court, and a kingdom. And if such wisdom can come from the simplest of voices, imagine what could happen if we learn to listen not just to the loud praises, but to the quiet truths around us. So, let this story stay with you. The next time someone speaks to you honestly, even if it stings, pause before rejecting it. Perhaps, like the king, you are being handed a gift in disguise, a chance to grow, to change, and to become greater than you were yesterday. Because in the end, greatness is not in being praised. Greatness is in being true.